experiences from Ghana and Myanmar. And here in the panel today we have Joop van den Broek. He'll be leading this session. He's the director of resilience, and he's right now sitting in Ethiopia. And we have Dr. Abhishek Subedi, who is a senior advisor working with the Wageningen Center for Development Innovation. And we have another panelist, Dr. Josiah Wobil, who is the chairman of the National Seed Council in Ghana. I will add him when he appears in the as an attendee. I'll promote him to the panelist. So right now, I would ask all the attendees to put their questions in the chat, and I will put the floor to Joop. So Joop, you can start over, and I'll add Dr. Josiah whenever he's entering.
Yeah, thank you very much, Arnab, and welcome to you all to this session on putting seed sector transformation at strategy level. Both Dr. Wobil, Dr. Subedi, and myself have been involved in a lot of activities around the world on policy formulation, on strategy development, roadmap development. And in preparation of this session, we were like, okay, how can we best present our experiences? Because this is always a very sometimes fuzzy topic on enabling environment issues, on policies, on regulations and laws. We decided to take very concrete examples of two countries in which major reforms took place in the last decade. Unfortunately, for one of the examples, Myanmar, time has gone backward a bit. It's a very sad situation there, but we would still like to present what was done there over the last 5-6 years in terms of policy reforms. The objective of this session is to get these two examples out, to see what we learned from these two countries and the process, as well as the content. So the process in terms of what was the policy reform process like, who were engaged, what was the timeline and the entire process in which this policy was formulated and implemented afterwards, as well as the content, like what were real major changes that were achieved, and how did these changes impact seed producers, companies, farmers, and after that we will try to come to sort of a synthesis. Can we draw lines? Can we draw comparisons between countries on what works? What didn't work, and what can we learn for the future? So having said that as an introduction, Arnab also said it, we have a section in this session as well in which questions can be answered by our panelists. So please use the chat for this. And given the fact that Dr. Wobil is not there yet at the moment, Abhishek, maybe I start with you. We start with the example of Myanmar, and you have about 10 minutes to describe a bit on both the context, like what was the environment in which we started discussing the strategy roadmap formulation. What was the context? Why did we embark on this process?
Yeah, thank you, Joop. Good morning, everyone, all the distinguished participants joining in these sessions. The case in the Myanmar, where we involved since 2015-16 onwards, we very much focused on seed regulatory reform, review and reforms, because there are a lot of bottlenecks being either private sectors or farmers were complaining about the several issues and challenges. One of the biggest challenges, it's often mentioned, the variety release and registration systems, issue related around the variety release and registration systems. They're like government farms or public farms who are designated to conduct VCU testing. Yeah, they are questioned by their capacities, also the transparencies in the fee, and the VCU test results were not trustworthy. And then second issues, regulatory issues mentions always is the lengthy procedures that the companies or the businesses, they have to follow, yeah, to get the business license or to organize the seed trade, like importing seed to the Myanmar. And this requires to go through the various government departments. Several paperwork need to be done. And then the informations are not available, the access to information, what kind of specific regulatory requirements has to be fulfilled, and that also lack of that information. And then from the farmer side, they always complain about the poor quality of certified or commercial seed. Even it's certified, still the issues around germinations, issue around the variety mixtures, and then also the issue around the early generation seed, like register foundation seeds, the quality. These are some of these challenges mentioned by the farmers as well as the producers and companies. And at the same time, when we were there, the World Bank Group report came out just in 2016 editions, the enabling the business of agriculture. That report highlighted, also compared number of countries, including Myanmar, and that report highlighted Myanmar seed sector performing much behind when you compare to the regional countries like Philippines or Vietnam. And then in that report, some of these regulatory challenges also been mentioned. So when we are starting working with the integrated seed sector development work, these are the issues brought forwards. And then that was the kind of a basis for us to engage in the next step.
No, very clear, Abhishkar, about the context. And then which process did you design to address these challenges and come to an agenda or a roadmap?
Yeah, what we did, first of all, it was joint hand partnership with World Bank Group, IFC, and the Integrated Seed Sector Development Myanmar programs. Here, we work very closely with government, the Ministry of Agriculture, the seed division, which is the focal point when it comes to the seed policy and regulations in the countries. So we started building a small core group with the chairmanship of the seed division director. So the government involvement was there from the start of the process, involving representatives of private sectors and as international organizations. A small 7-member core committees was formalized, and that committee includes Wageningen University research teams we involved as the facilitators or the implementation of the review process. And we did the review of what are the regulatory challenges that we can observe when you go through these policies, laws, and regulatory documents in Myanmar. And we also look at some of the examples, and in the neighboring countries, we look at the Philippines examples, but also we look at the examples from Kenya, because the World Bank reports in 2016 editions, the champion in Africa for the seed sectors was mentioned, Kenya. We look at the Netherlands as the global champion in its seed sector performance. So we look at these are the global, regional and global champions, how they are really performing their seed sectors when it comes to the seed regulatories and creating more enabling environment for both public and private sectors. With that review, we started a very inclusive multi-stakeholder dialogue process. We facilitated that dialogue in different regions or zone of Myanmar, engaging with the public sectors, engaging with the private sectors, engaging with the NGOs, farmers groups, associations. So it's a broad multi-stakeholder discussions, discussing what are the challenges and issues that's really coming across the different sectors. And these regional dialogue we organize in the northern part, in the dry zone part, in the southern delta part, in that way. And these dialogues really help us to deepen the understanding of differences. In different regions, the challenges are different, but at the same time, there are some common bottlenecks across the countries. And then these challenges we summarized and presented at the national levels by mobilizing the ISSD Myanmar national seed sector platforms, where we have a broader involvement of the government representatives, also the national seed policy bodies like National Seed Committee members, NGOs, private sectors. So we did this kind of a final validation and prioritizations. After that national validations, the proposals were summarized, prioritized, and these regulatory proposals were submitted with the Technical Seed Committee and the National Seed Committee, which is the regulatory frameworks. Any regulatory change or reform, we have to go through that process. So we follow that process. And then that National Seed Committees approved most of the proposed reform proposals. And these proposals, once the National Seed Committee approved, it received the legal mandate for immediate implementations. After that, we organized series of training, series of awareness and sensitizations, workshop programs to really build the capacity, as well as the sensitize the stakeholders. What are these new regulatory reforms and changes took place in Myanmar?
Yeah, no, very clear, Abhishkar. So quite a lengthy process. And then in terms of concrete outcomes, like I said in my introduction, sometimes we develop policies, we develop strategies, but they end up in a drawer at the ministry or somewhere else. But we would like to see real impact of these roadmaps, these strategies. Can you name a few of these concrete examples of where the outcome of the roadmap and action agenda was really felt by producers, by farmers?
Yeah, we're really taking into the issues and challenges faced by the seed producers or seed companies in Myanmar, or the international companies who are operating in Myanmar. The first breakthrough or regulatory reform and immediate implementations was development of one-stop shop. It is the because a lot of issues been identified because of these several departments, several procedures. It's very lengthy, and then it takes times. So the government of Myanmar, the Ministry of Agriculture, decided and immediately started this one-stop shop, which includes all the seed regulatory services in one place, and launching of this Myanmar Seed Portal. The Myanmar Seed Portals brings all the procedures, protocols, guidelines, information about the requirements, what is the fees is needed for the variety release or variety registration. This all information is now put into the Myanmar Seed Portal, which has also online application systems. So it's really creating a transparency in the systems and creating these one-stop shops. So now the companies or domestic producers, they don't need to go to the different partners. Just go to the portals, put your questions, apply it. So that is the one big breakthrough, which is fully functional now in Myanmar. Second is the reform took place in the variety release and registration, a number of reform. For instance, one of the biggest questions from the private sectors, especially the vegetable sectors, where the exemption of the vegetables from the VCU testing requirements, because there was a very genuine logic behind it, because the varieties in the vegetables turnover is very high, and companies are more responsible for their brand. So there are a number of vegetables been exempted, like out of 10 horticulture crops, 8 were exempted from the VCU testing. VCU testing procedure is also very much simplified. Yeah, even now the companies can organize VCU tests in their own field with the supervision of technical seed committee members, because the bottleneck was the VCU testing farms were not efficient. It also the import seed business, starting a seed business, which need to go through number of paperwork, number of requirements, that has been also reduced and simplified. It's just a few, just very like a need of phytosanitary certificate, paying of paying the fee, just few requirements, and also the one business license. In the past, any companies or producers, they want to start a business, they have to get this seed business license for a crop, and that takes time, that takes more money. But now it's clustered into the group of crops, like field crops is one category, horticulture is another crop category, industrial crops another category. So one business license per categories allows to multiple crops. The producers, a company can start the business. And the other important breakthrough is the challenge on early generation seed. The access to early generation seed was always challenging for the domestic seed producers and companies. So the long-term forward contracting. So it's a 5-year contract, legal contract between the NARS who produce or release the owner of the varieties. They establish the contract with the companies, and they guaranteed that for the 5 years, they will provide the required volume of the early generation seed of that specific variety and crop. And then other reform was regularizations of this technical seed committee, national seed committee meeting. In the past, it's a long delay, and that's everything delay the decision making. And then now every quarters, these committees are meeting, and the decision making is taking really speed. These are the benefits, immediate benefits and outcomes for the producers and companies, but there are also benefits for the farmers. For example,
I'm sorry, I will have to cut you short because we're running a bit out of time, but I'm sure that your points will come back later in the synthesis as well. I think very good to hear that, especially this simplification and increasing transparency really showed results on the ground. And I think also the next step, what happened in Myanmar was the digitization. So you make things transparent and you digitize them in a one-stop shop. After you have gone through this simplification process, cutting out steps in the process that were unnecessary. I'm very happy Dr. Wobil has joined us. Welcome, Dr. Wobil. I understood your session. It's a bit confusing indeed. We have 2 parallel sessions running at the moment. I already gave a brief introduction about this session, the importance of policy strategies, and especially how they impact people on the ground, seed producers, farmers, and with your experience from many countries, not only Ghana. Today we will talk mainly about Ghana, but you have been active in many more countries, including Myanmar, but also Iraq. I would like to give the floor to you to tell us a bit about especially the process that surrounded the policy formulation in Ghana that took place around 2013, 2014, already a long time ago, and the action agenda. And in particular, what was the context? What was the reason, the rationale for embarking on this seed policy reform process?
Thank you very much, Job, and it's nice to see you and the other colleagues. The opportunity to share my little experience with the other colleagues. I think you want me to start with Myanmar or with Ghana?
Ghana first. Bishkar already
a
lot about Myanmar, but we can go later to Myanmar in the synthesis session. First Ghana.
Very good. The Ghana situation is a bit unique, in the sense that there was not a rapid or a sudden need to have a policy, because Ghana, being an agricultural country and having already accepted that improved seeds are very important for the country's economy, there have been aspects of seed policy embedded in all the official agricultural documents since independence from the late 50s. That is why I have come to realize that indeed a policy does not start when it is printed. A policy is discerned in how stakeholders tackle affairs. And therefore, when we started looking at the need for policy, we saw that the issues relating to how to develop the sector were already being pursued, although in a rather spasmodic manner and also not consistent. So the first reason why we decided to write the policy is because we thought we want to be consistent. We want to record our intentions in a way that will survive staff rollovers. Also, we wanted to assure our partners how consistent we are in our thinking, so that when they see how we want to move, they will adjust their own tactics to be in line with ours. At the same time, at the time of the policy formulation, we saw that seed issues were taken on very rapid international and strategic dimensions. And we need to record our stand so that both our people and our friends will know exactly where Ghana stands and how we are taking steps to protect the national integrity in this area. So this is the beginning of it. At the same time, we were looking at structural adjustment in our economy, where we were departing now from the long years of reliance on the public coffers for almost everything and trying to carve out a way for the private sector to assume a role. And so the thinking of Ghana at that time was that, okay, public sector has a role to play, particularly in the servicing areas of research, early generation production, quality assurance, and legislation, and extension. These were, of course, very, very expensive aspects, and the public sector thought they would opt for continuation of the level of seed production in the country by assuming the cost of these. But then they thought the private sector has the prospect of becoming the best manager of commercialized entities. So from 2013, government took a policy to relegate to the private sector all aspects of the seed sector which have to do with commerce. So that was the basis of the policy. And then also we thought knowledge of the seed sector was rather low among stakeholders. So Ghana's policy document is unique in the sense that it has a big part of it devoted to educating the public, advocating, and creating awareness of the key aspects that go into the seed sector. Thank you very much for now.
Yeah, excellent, Dr. Bobil. And indeed, what I also remember was in terms of the process, we had a very comprehensive seed policy at that time. But then the next step was, how do we bring that into practice? Could you elaborate a bit on that process, moving from a policy to, let's say, an action agenda or more concrete?
Yes, thank you very much. In fact, since the ascendancy of policy matters was recognized by FAO many, many years ago, soon it was discovered that a lot of countries were very happy just to have the policy. And then it was realized by all the experts that really you cannot stop at policy. A policy must be implemented to be effective. And Ghana did exactly that. And I'm happy that yourself and Abishka joined us at various stages to set the ball rolling in that direction. And so Ghana has a very, very comprehensive national seed plan, which is actually born out of the policy. The implementable elements of the policy have been developed and moved into a strategy by which all the things that the policy document says can be implemented in the country. And I must say that this has revolutionized the seed sector in Ghana. Because at one go, you can see our plans that we have as a nation. Because we had a very, very inclusive and comprehensive and collaborative arrangement to tap the brains all over the country to get a plan which really answers all our aspirations. So any donor or partner or company or friend or foe coming into Ghana knows exactly how the nation is positioned. And so you pitch your tent alongside ours. Either you pitch or you don't enter at all. We have seen that big organizations like AGRA, for example, all the initiatives they have taken in recent times have been in line with the policy. USAID has also looked favorably on the policy to determine their priorities. Everybody is following the policy. So it makes life a little bit easier. And it has really assisted to open the way for the private sector to grow much, much faster than before the plan, because they know exactly what the priorities of everybody are. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is a similar experience that we had in Myanmar, that the roadmap by itself and the action agenda arose the attention of many other development partners, and they started looking at it. It became a bit of an a la carte document in which some development partners picked out that topic, the government picked out another topic, and then together it sort of cemented the comprehensive seed policy that was behind it. And I think that for me was also one of the big eye-openers of how a document by itself serves that purpose. The last question for you, Dr. Wobil, is on the very practical impact on the ground. Can you maybe give one or two examples of very concrete impact on the ground of the seed plan or the seed policy? How did it affect farmers or seed producers?
Okay. One concrete example would be the interventions in seed legislation. Hitherto, there are many people who did not even realize that the seed area has any law. AGRA came in and determined that this is a very important area, and I agreed with them. We have done a project recently to develop awareness and sensitization, as well as implementation of the legislative framework, which has led to a campaign, which has really opened many eyes. And now there's a move towards private sector companies having their own internal seed testing units or laboratories. We have licensed operators, which is actually prioritizing some aspects of quality assurance, so that there are private people who can be trained and licensed to inspect farms. We have many issues in the legislative area which were proposed in the plan, which are actually now living activities. We also have interventions in the variety release area, which is making Ghana now one of the fastest variety release situations, because we used to have a long period of variety release, but now through interventions, mooted by the plan, we are cutting down the period of variety release, period of registration. We are also minimizing the cost by doing a few things with the variety release committee and so forth. So the plan is really doing everything. I remember your own interventions in the Seed Council, the National Seed Council. I remember you gave some very good ideas, which which we have tried to implement. And now the National Security Council is a very dynamic entity, not because I'm myself the chairman, but the institutionalized rearrangements have proven to be very, very effective, and we are moving forward.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Very nice examples, Dr. Wobil. And maybe a follow-up question, because I don't see too many questions popping up now in the chat. There is this enabling business and agriculture index, in which also the seed sector is being questioned, is being ranked. To what extent did that document play a role in the discussions on the variety release? Because I remember there's this indicator on how many days does it take for a variety to be released in a certain country, and I can imagine Ghana wasn't scoring very high on that index. Did that play a role in convincing the government or in reforming that system?
Yes, the TASAI is the company which did this work. TASAI has been a good ally of Ghana in the drive towards seed sector excellence. What they have done is to reveal what is happening to us, you know. So there have been periodic national surveys, and they have consulted all the stakeholders and then prepared a report which we all share and discuss. So they have been like a mirror, you know. We look through it to see what is happening to us, and that enables us to make mid-course corrections here and there. TASAI has been excellent, and we have valued their input very, very much. But at the same time, I must say that we ourselves, we have known, after all, we know what is happening in the other countries. And although in the past, when everything was under the public sector, this was not such a big show. Now with the private sector involvement, they don't have the time to waste on flimsy things. So there's more seriousness now to try to support the private sector development by minimizing some of these hindrances which tend to hold them back.
Yeah, no, thanks for that clarification. And there's a question from the chat, Dr. Wobil, about the seed plan. Would it be possible to share that seed plan with the participants of this session?
I think those who will write to us one-on-one, we will send them the document. We will send them the document.
Yeah, we will put your email address in the chat then, and then they can contact you directly.
Yeah.
Excellent. Then we move to the second part of our session. These were the two examples from Myanmar and Ghana. In the second part, we will try to come to a synthesis, like in terms of the process and in terms of the design of the policies and the roadmaps. What can we learn from that? What were critical success factors? What were obstacles that had to be overcome? Maybe Dr. Abishkar, can you first elaborate a bit on what you think was crucial in the process in Myanmar for making it a success and making it a very workable, practical type of document?
The experiences from Myanmar, what we have learned that the development of policies or regulatory frameworks and its implementations, the first and foremost is the government ownerships from the start of the process is very key, especially the Ministry of Agriculture. What we have learned, because the seed regulatory talks are divided into different divisions and departments within the Ministry of Agriculture, we need to find a good entry point who take that initiative within the Ministry of Agriculture. So for example, in the case of Myanmar, it is the seed divisions who take that courage and participated in the review and the reform process. It encouraged to other departments to join hands in developing a process, regulatory frameworks that responds to the challenges. That is the one. Government ownerships and finding a right entry point within the Ministry of Agriculture. The second, what we have learned if you really facilitated this inclusive multi-stakeholder dialogue with the public, private, civil societies, farmers groups, that makes the case more real and convincing. And also it's build the stakeholders ownership in whatever the documents or regulatory frameworks that we come, because it's been discussed, prioritized, and validated by these stakeholders. So we need to include this inclusive multi-stakeholder process, not at the national level. We really need to go to the zonal, regional levels, because a national level is one, but the zonal level, the issues could be different. And the third lessons, the inspiring case from neighboring countries, like in what we did, the examples from Philippines. It always inspired to the government. Also, they want to see their seed sector performing better. They want to be competitive, so they don't want to see their seed sectors underperforming. So highlighting those good stories and experiences from the neighboring countries also enlighten to the government, as well as also inspire to the seed sector stakeholders. And the last, this whole process should be facilitated by a neutral facilitator who doesn't really bring their biased views. In Myanmar, we from Wageningen University did that talks. Being a knowledge institute, we really put our unbiased views. So these are some lessons we have learned. And of course, this enabling business of agriculture, that kind of a global review documents also provides where the country is now, where the country's seed sector is performing. And that's open up there beyond the country's context. So yeah, these are some lessons from the Myanmar process.
Thanks, Dr. Abishkar. And one follow-up question from the chat, something that one of the participants struck. If you're so close with the government, if you're working so closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and possibly the National Seed Council, doesn't that disenfranchise you from the private sector, or does the private sector still trust you, or farmer organizations still trust you in organizing those roundtable meetings or discussions?
That's a question to me, or you?
Yeah, it's a question, follow-up question for you, Abishkar.
Okay. No, it is not only the government, of course, because the policy and regulatories, these are like government shouldn't, yeah, they take the decisions. So they need to be on board, and then the building trust and participation is key. But that doesn't mean that private sectors were not involved. They were the real major partners in this whole process in Myanmar. So every zone where we've been there, like if there are associations, but in the Myanmar, when we started this process, there was not formal seed association, but the members of the private sector companies, producers, domestic producers, international private sector's representatives, they were heavily involved in identifying the problems, also proposing the solutions. Now, if you really go back to the Myanmar, ask this question with the private sectors, I think that I have already heard from them, they're really happy with these outcomes.
Thank you, thank you. And I think also one of the outcomes was that the private sector now has a seat in the National Seed Council, in the Technical Seed Committee, to participate and to discuss on the major changes that are being proposed. Dr. Gobil, back to you. I think you already answered a question on the minor crops. Maybe you can briefly elaborate on that, and then move to the main question on what, according to you, were some of the key success factors, key learnings from the entire process of policy formulation and seed plan formulation. What worked well, what didn't work well?
Yes. You know, the issue of so-called minor crops is very important. They may be minor in the sense that the private sector more or less has sidelined them in the former seed sector. But they are not minor at all in the lives of the farming populace. This is an area where the farmer managed seed system is the dominant source of seeds. And it makes up nearly 80 to 90%, in fact, in many, many cases, 100%. because the farmer sector has completely abandoned them. And of course, there are good reasons, because they are normally not in such a bulk that can sustain commercialized activities of the type that we see in private companies. But they are nevertheless very, very important in the diet and livelihoods of people. And so in our national seed policy, we have a whole chapter on what to do about minor crops. And we have followed it up in the plan to have specific plans on how to tackle these. We have even gone further to have accommodation for seeds in that area in our seed legislation, although it is not fully advanced as for cereals and other true seeds, but we are in the process of commercializing the most important minor crops, especially the vegetative crops like yam and cassava. They are being certified in Ghana now. And indigenous varieties of yams are now being registered, So we have gone a long way. And we are saying that some of the indigenous vegetable seeds like garden eggs and okra and local peppers and so forth, where there's no company supplying the seeds, we are going to empower agricultural stations to have nurseries and seed multiplication units, so that they will be closer to the farmers who use these seeds, who need these seeds. Not only that, but also to serve as some kind of farmer training schools for them to learn of approved practices to enhance their on-farm practices. So we have not neglected minor crops at all, because in Ghana, these minor crops are very, very important, and they are not minor at all.
Clear. And to the second question, Dr. Wobil, on what, according to you, were some of the key success factors in developing this seed policy and the seed plan? What worked well and what didn't work well in that entire process? What can we learn from that?
Okay, I think the key to successful seed policy formulation is collaboration and inclusiveness. Because this is a document where everybody must share his good opinion. And even bad opinions should be laid down so that you have chance to disabuse minds. So in Ghana, we did that, and I think we took the message of the policy formulation to every region. And in fact, within the region, every district. So everybody had a chance to take pot shots at the initial thinking, and we had a lot of turnaround in ideas, which eventually ended up with a document which everybody recognized or was comfortable with. So that is number one. Number two is, it is good that in an exercise like this, the national authorities should themselves put money forward. This is a sovereign thing. This is a national exercise. This is something which is at the heart of our most precious endeavor, agriculture. So it should not be started by donors. It should be started by government. Of course, donors are welcome to assist in it when they see that the nation is serious, and they can bring in their assistance. But it should never be the other way around. I think in Ghana, of course, it wasn't so bad. We actually started the process, and we were happy. FAO came in and assisted us, and then USAID came in with AGRA and ISSD to assist in the plan. So I think I would encourage all countries to always allocate their own national resources first, and then everything else will follow.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think that is a very, very good advice. One last question from the participants for you, Dr. Bobil. How often should you embark on this seed policy process? How should you do it every 10 years? Every 50 years? What is a good period for developing seed policy and a seed plan?
Okay, thank you. I think this is a very, very important question. Let me give you an example of the Gambia case. Gambia seed policy was developed with the assistance of FAO in 2008, thereabout. I was an officer in the FAO then. I was the one who was sent to Gambia to assist them to do it. And then 10 years later, roughly 10 years later, I, as a private consultant now, was requested by the government of Gambia to go and assist them to review it. So we recently had a review of the policy, which had not been converted into a plan. So we took advantage during that review to go on to the policy. And if you go to Gambia now, you will see the transformation which is occurring there after the conversion to plan. The EU is there, World Bank is there, and the government itself is allocating a lot of resources. And now Gambia, small program as they have, has all the key structures. They have a good lab, they have a very well positioned National Seed Service, they have private seed growers who have converted into companies, and many, many things are happening there.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting part about these policies and regulations. It doesn't often go linear from first the policy, then the seed law reformation, then the regulations, directives. Often you see it's a very fuzzy process in which also regulations can change without having a seed policy. You can develop an action agenda while there has been a very old seed policy, and you take the process the other way around. So we see that quite a lot in countries that it's not a linear process. You take the first step that is most needed. I'm afraid we have to.
But let me just complete the answer by saying that in Gambia it has taken 10 years for them to realize that they need more. In other countries it may be longer. In others, it may be shorter. There's no hard and fast rule about it. I think empirically, I would say 10 years is long enough for things to begin to show which need to be responded to. But I think the best way is for a periodic review, such as the SAI is doing. And periodically, you will see that new issues are coming up. Processes which were initiated earlier, if they are not working, you begin to see after about 10 years. So you have to react to the national seed audit, to be able to know whether issues are large enough to mount a review process. Because often it's just a small mid-course correction which can do the trick. It's not always that you have to do a whole exercise, but I think periodic review and audit is the key. And I think all the stakeholders should be aware of that.
Thank you. Well, I think that is a very nice conclusion to this meeting. And indeed, also in this respect, these institutions are so important that you have a National Seed Council, you have working groups in which also farmer organizations and companies are represented, so that you can take this discussion to the highest level possible, to put new topics on the agenda, to feed back experiences from the ground, from farmers, from companies, back to the policy level and have that interaction. I'm afraid we have to leave it here. Dr. Bobil, Dr. Abishka, thank you very much for your contributions. 3 takeaway messages that I personally took out of this. First is this importance of showing other examples from other countries that Dr. Abiskar brought up, and that is being assisted by these rankings like the enabling business and agriculture ranking, in which countries can see how do we perform vis-a-vis other countries, do we want to improve on this performance? A bit of competition. Then in terms of the process, it's a bit of an open door, but it's so important, this collaboration and inclusiveness that Dr. Wobil mentioned, not only in the capital city, not only in Accra or in Yangon, but throughout the country, in which not only the big companies can bring topics to the agenda, but also smaller domestic companies, seed producer cooperatives, even farmer organizations, and that through that process, the most salient points, the most important challenges come up and are being incorporated in a policy. And the last one that I took out is make that policy into something concrete, develop an action agenda, develop a seed plan, and make that plan and agenda even more concrete by putting a budget to it, by putting responsible people to it that will implement that specific point on the agenda. And have government take a share in that as well. And that's another point from Dr. Wobil, the importance of government's sovereignty to also put their money where their mouth is. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Abiskar and Dr. Wobil for this session. And back to you, Arno.
Yeah, thank you very much. You, Dr. Abiskar, Dr. Wobil. And the next session will be in the, if you can see, will be on seed sector transformation in practice, private seed sector development in Burundi. And I'm putting the link in the chat. All participants can go to the main session, clicking this link. The Zoom link will be there. We can go to the main session where we can follow this this session on the private seed sector development in Burundi. So thank you very much, the panelists and the attendees. It was a really nice discussion that we have here. Very nice summing up of things, and thank you very much.